It happened fast. One sentence, one calm voice, and suddenly the room shifted. Ron spoke, Betty froze, and for the first time in a long time, the pressure stopped pushing forward and snapped backward. You could feel it. This was not raised voices or drama for show. This was authority slipping, right on camera. And once control cracks like that, nothing sits the same again. Betty had been talking, filling the space the way she always does, framing fear as concern and urgency as love. And then Ron cut through it. Not loud, not angry, direct. He drew a line without asking permission. Julia's body was not a group project. The air went still. Betty looked stunned. Brandon looked caught between loyalty and panic. Julia looked relieved and shaken at the same time. That moment changed the tone of everything. And while all eyes were on that table, another fracture was forming elsewhere. Elizabeth had reached her limit. The quiet tolerance. The smiling through discomfort. Gone. She drew her own line, and this one cut deeper. Marriage first. Friendship second. She did not hesitate. She did not soften it. The message landed hard, and it landed publicly. What makes these moments hit is not the conflict. Conflict has been living here for seasons. What hits is the loss of control. Parents realizing influence has limits. Partners realizing pressure has consequences. Friends realizing loyalty has conditions. Ron stepping in was not heroic. It was overdue. Elizabeth confronting the situation was not impulsive. It was a build-up. And Brandon standing there, silent, showed more than any argument could. The argument ended. The tension did not. Silence walked in and took a seat. And silence is where the real damage starts. Before this blow-up, the cracks were already there. They did not appear in one episode or one argument. They grew slowly. A comment here. A sigh there. A look held too long. Brandon and Julia have been living inside a loop where concern keeps turning into pressure. Talk about kids turns into timelines. Timelines turn into urgency. Urgency turns into fear. And fear rarely sits quietly. From the start, fertility hovered over their relationship like a deadline nobody agreed on. Julia spoke openly about surgery and anxiety. Brandon listened, then pushed. Not with cruelty. With expectation. The kind wrapped in future plans and family language. His parents stepped in early, offering opinions framed as guidance. Advice framed as love. Over time, those words stopped sounding optional. They started sounding like instructions. Betty did not wake up one morning and decide to cross lines. She crossed them inch by inch, each time believing she was helping, each time forgetting whose body carried the weight. Control often enters wearing concern. It smiles. It nods. Then it settles in. At the same time, another tension brewed quietly. Elizabeth and Lauren built a friendship around shared frustrations and venting. It felt safe. It felt private. Until it was not. One comment turned into a label. One label turned into a wound. Elizabeth absorbed it for longer than people noticed. She stayed quiet. She kept things moving. She chose peace over honesty. That choice has an expiration date. This is where empathy matters without excuses. Brandon wants children. That desire matters. Betty wants grandchildren. That feeling exists. Elizabeth wants to protect her marriage. That instinct runs deep. None of that disappears because someone else feels hurt. At the same time, intention does not erase impact. And this is the part where everything you thought you understood starts to wobble. Because pressure never announces itself until the damage shows. These stories collide because the same pattern repeats. Silence builds. Pressure stacks. Then one sentence breaks the surface. When that happens, people reveal priorities fast. One conversation ahead will reframe these relationships. Not by what gets said out loud, but by who listens when the room goes quiet. Julia did not talk about surgery like a storyline. She talked about it like a person facing something unknown. Her voice slowed. Her posture changed. Fear sat on her shoulders. Not drama fear. The quiet kind. The kind where someone needs space to think. And instead of space, she got opinions. Lots of them. At first, Brandon listened. He nodded. He said the right words. Then, his tone shifted. The future entered the room. Kids. Timelines. Plans. The conversation stopped being about her body and turned into a shared problem that needed solving. That is where things started to slide. When fear meets expectation, expectation often speaks louder. Betty did not wait long to join in. She framed urgency as wisdom. Age became a talking point. Biology became leverage. Her words landed heavy. Not because facts do not exist, but because timing matters. Delivery matters. And who gets to decide matters most. Julia sat there absorbing it all, while everyone else debated outcomes like spectators. Brandon stepped closer to the center. His desire became the anchor of the conversation. He spoke about partnership, about togetherness, about holding hands through surgery. Support sounded nice on the surface. Underneath, pressure pressed harder. Wanting children does not make someone wrong. Wanting certainty during fear does. And right here, the mood shifts. Because support starts sounding like persuasion, and persuasion starts sounding like control, watch who spoke. Watch who interrupted. Watch who explained Julia's body while Julia sat present. That tells the story. Ron noticed. He watched the pace quicken and the air tighten. He did not raise his voice. He did not compete. He waited. That choice mattered. When Ron finally spoke, restraint carried more weight than authority ever could. He centered the risk. He centered her body. He refused to turn concern into pressure. In one calm moment, he modeled something rare in this family. Respect without demand. Betty pushed back. She dismissed the risk. She minimized the fear. Her words sounded rehearsed, like this conversation had lived in her head for years. Brandon looked stuck, torn between agreement and expectation. His silence spoke louder than his words earlier. When Julia said she felt overwhelmed, the room did not slow down. When she said she needed time, the room kept moving. That is when frustration surfaced. Not loud, firm. This is where many viewers leaned forward. Because the pattern became impossible to ignore. Julia did not explode. She did not insult. She stated her position. She did not want children now. She did not want surgery under pressure. Her voice shook. Her stance did not. The shock on Betty's face said everything. This was not part of the plan. Brandon reacted fast. He asked how her decision affected him. He walked away when the answer did not center his needs. That exit mattered. It turned vulnerability into conflict. While Brandon processed at a distance, Julia stayed. She spoke to her parents. She repeated the words she had already said. Her fear was real. The pressure was heavy. Her father acknowledged age without dismissing her autonomy. Even then, you could see the weight shift again. And if you felt tension here, you were meant to. Because this moment rewires the balance in their marriage. Back at the table, the conversation tried to restart. Betty tried to talk again. Ron shut it down. Clear. Final. He reminded everyone whose life this belonged to. The room quieted. No applause. No victory. Only stillness. Then Julia said it. Not angry. Not dramatic. Final. No children. Not now. Not under pressure. Maybe not ever. The words surprised everyone, including her. She did not smile. She did not soften them. She protected herself. Silence followed. And in that silence, you could feel the truth. This was never about surgery. This was about who gets to decide when fear shows up. When Ron spoke, the room did not explode. That is why it worked. No chest puffing. No lecture. no attempt to win. He waited until the pressure peaked, and then lowered the temperature with one sentence rooted in respect. He did not argue facts. He did not debate timelines. He shifted ownership back to where it belonged. Betty tried to continue. She reached for logic. She minimized risk. She leaned on familiarity. Ron did not meet her there. He refused the back and forth. He reminded everyone that concern does not grant control. He said it plainly. This decision belongs to Julia. Full stop. No footnotes. That landed harder than shouting ever would. You could see it in Betty's face. Confusion first. Then resistance. Then silence. Control struggles do not collapse loudly. They stall. When someone stops engaging, the power shifts. This is why viewers reacted so strongly, because calm boundaries feel rare in rooms built on emotional pressure. Ron did not attack Betty. He did not embarrass her. He also did not protect her feelings at the expense of someone else's body. That balance matters. It showed restraint without retreat. It showed care without ownership. People notice because this family rarely moves that way. Brandon sat in it, quiet, watching. That silence told a separate story. Was he listening or calculating? Was he relieved someone else said it, or frustrated the momentum stopped? Hard to tell. Silence hides more than anger. Betty regrouped fast. She always does. She reframed. She tried again. Ron shut it down again. Shorter this time. Firmer. No room left. The message stayed the same. Wanting grandchildren does not override fear. Being a parent does not mean access to choices. This moment worked because Ron did not position himself as the winner. He positioned himself as the boundary. That distinction matters. Boundaries do not argue. They stand. And here is the uncomfortable part. Calm moments like this rarely end the conflict. They delay the louder one. You could feel it. Betty did not accept the limit. She paused. Brandon did not respond. He withdrew. Julia sat in the quiet, absorbing both relief and uncertainty. The cycle slowed, not broken. Respect entered the room. Control stepped back. For now. The question hanging heavy was simple. What happens when calm wears off and expectations return? Brandon did not yell when he walked away. He did not slam anything. He removed himself, which sometimes looks calm but often signals something else. When expectations collide with fear, some people freeze, others flee. Brandon chose distance, and in doing so, he shifted the focus from Julia's body to his future. He talked about kids like a loss already happening, like a door closing in real time. That framing matters. Instead of sitting with Julia in uncertainty, he jumped ahead to imagined regret. He asked how her choice affected him. He did not ask how she felt inside her fear. That difference landed heavy. Wanting children is not selfish. Dreaming of a family does not make someone cruel. Those desires come from hope, from imagining a life filled with connection. The problem shows up when that hope becomes pressure, especially during a moment where the other person feels exposed and scared. Fear needs safety. Pressure removes it. Brandon spoke about being there for surgery, holding hands. Support language filled his sentences. Yet support loses meaning when it comes attached to expectations, when reassurance carries conditions. Julia did not need promises. She needed permission to pause. And this is where viewers split, because some saw a man losing his dream, while others saw a woman losing her voice. Psychologically, this moment reveals more than anger ever could. When people feel powerless, they search for control. Control can look like urgency, like deadlines, like framing someone else's hesitation as delay. Brandon sounded overwhelmed, but overwhelmed does not excuse pushing someone else past their limits. At the bar, away from the table, Brandon spoke freely. He said he could not imagine life without kids. That sentence carries weight. It also carries risk. When spoken during conflict, it turns into an ultimatum even if unintentional. Julia heard it. Everyone did. Back at the table, Julia did not chase him. She did not plead. She stayed seated. That choice signaled something new. She was done performing reassurance. She had given her answer. She had explained her fear. She had asked for time. The rest was not hers to fix. If this moment felt uncomfortable, that is because it exposed a truth many couples avoid. Shared dreams do not erase individual limits. Brandon returned quieter, less certain. The conversation moved forward, but something shifted underneath. Expectations once spoken do not disappear. They hover. Every future discussion about timing, health, or plans will carry the echo of this moment. Was Brandon grieving a future he assumed, or avoiding the present fear in front of him? Hard to say. What is clear is this: pressure did not bring clarity, it created distance. And distance, once introduced, changes how every next decision feels. This fight did not end with raised voices, it ended with unresolved needs. Those needs will resurface, not loudly, persistently. Elizabeth had stayed quiet for longer than most viewers realized. She smiled, nodded, and carried her frustrations in a way that made it feel invisible. But all that quiet built pressure, and when it finally released, it did so with precision. The target, Lauren. Not out of malice. Not entirely. But because the boundary between friendship and marriage had been crossed, and Elizabeth felt she had to defend what she believed belonged to her marriage first. Lauren's words had cut, allegedly lightly at first. A comment here, a joke there. Yet when repeated and shared, they became something heavier. Calling Andre a dick in private became public fuel when Elizabeth repeated it. The question immediately surfaces: who betrayed whom? Elizabeth's response framed it clearly. Marriage loyalty trumps friendship commentary, and she was not afraid to enforce that principle, even if it meant a fallout. What makes this scene hit hard is the duality. You can empathize with Elizabeth while still noticing the cost. From a behavioral standpoint, this is a classic conflict of social roles. Friends vent. Spouses protect. Those roles overlap, and friction appears. Elizabeth protected her husband at the cost of a friendship. Lauren's critique was intended as honesty among peers. Elizabeth interpreted it as a breach. The interpretation matters because it triggers selective outrage. Not everything is offensive, only what threatens personal stakes. The timing amplified everything. A housewarming conversation spilled into a double-date reality. Context shifted. What Lauren thought was casual venting turned into evidence of disloyalty. Elizabeth felt her trust violated, yet she did not shout. She laid out facts, carefully constructed, and the weight carried itself. This is subtle but devastating. Emotional betrayal often whispers. It does not roar. Bringing social awareness into the mix shows another layer. Elizabeth was conscious of reputation. How she responded would signal boundaries to friends and viewers alike. Every word was a lesson in social calibration, defending your partner without losing composure, enforcing limits without being aggressive. In theory, this is wisdom. In practice, it escalated tension because Lauren did not anticipate the emotional architecture behind Elizabeth's decisions. And here is where viewers leaned in, because loyalty rarely looks this strategic in real time. Elizabeth's defense of Andre included admitting faults, acknowledging minor mistakes, and yet keeping the line between personal concern and public discussion clear. She gave the illusion of transparency while asserting her boundaries. That illusion, however, is fragile. Once trust is compromised, it erodes quietly. The audience sees the cracks in relationships long before the characters do. Lauren reacted with shock, confusion, and a sense of injustice. Her friendship had been framed as casual and safe. She had not realized the consequences of her words. Elizabeth, in her calm, sharp, and controlled manner, demonstrated that betrayal does not require malice. Context and interpretation are enough. For the audience, this segment crystallizes a key insight. Honesty is not absolute. Loyalty is not negotiable. Ethical lines are invisible until someone crosses them. Elizabeth weaponized neither deception nor rage. She weaponized clarity. And the fallout is measured but inevitable. By the end, both women sat in a quiet tension. Not yelling, not storming out. Just a realization settling in that trust breaks quietly, not loudly. Words were spoken, boundaries enforced, and the silence that followed carried more weight than any shout ever could. Andre had a way of sharing that felt urgent, as if the world needed to know everything immediately. He recounted events, feelings, and mistakes without considering timing or impact. In his mind, transparency was trust. In reality, it left others exposed. Lauren, on the other hand, spoke bluntly. Her words were sharp, direct, and often stripped of the soft cushioning that relationships require. When honesty collides with bluntness, the fallout is rarely predictable. Alex found himself in the middle, caught between defending his partner and containing the ripple effect. Every statement, every clarification, became a negotiation of who felt betrayed first. Behaviorally, this is where tension escalates, when multiple people claim moral high ground, but no one pauses to assess context. Andre intended openness, Lauren intended clarity, and Alex intended to shield. Yet all three collided in a space where timing mattered more than intent. Viewers immediately felt the strain, because truth without consent can wound as sharply as lies. Psychologically, this is a classic misalignment. Silence can feel safe, but it corrodes trust over time. Speaking out without consent can feel honest, but it damages bonds. Andre and Lauren's dynamic highlights this tension perfectly. Bluntness without sensitivity amplifies mistakes. Oversharing without coordination turns private struggles into public stress. The characters are not villains. They are navigating emotional stakes poorly, which is human, but the consequences are real. Every exchange between them carried microshocks. One moment, Elizabeth's anger frames the context. The next, Lauren's words reframe it. Andre's attempts to clarify often made things worse. What he believed was transparency came across as exposure. This is why behavior, not identity, is key. The problem is not Andre or Lauren. The problem is execution, timing, consideration, and audience. And here's the tension viewers could feel in their own lives. When is honesty constructive? And when does it become harm? Alex's position amplified the stakes. He had to weigh loyalty, truth, and preservation of peace simultaneously. Swallowing resentment is a choice. Speaking bluntly is another. Neither is inherently wrong, but the combination without calibration guarantees friction. The narrative shows that interpersonal skill is as important as emotional honesty. As this segment closes, the lingering question remains: do apologies repair the harm, or do they merely pause the damage until the next misalignment? The answer is not simple. The audience sees the cracks, the recalibration attempts, and the silent judgments all at once. The story holds a mirror. Even the best intentions can fracture trust when behavior is misaligned with timing. This moment leaves viewers reflecting on how truth, loyalty, and communication interact, and how fragile relationships become when timing and sensitivity are ignored. Viewers went wild over this episode, and it was easy to see why. Social media lit up with debates that mirrored exactly what was happening on screen. Some fans championed Julia's choice, arguing that no one, parent, spouse, or friend, has the right to override her fear or her body. Others defended Brandon, insisting that wanting children is not unreasonable, and that emotional frustration is natural when plans feel threatened. the friendship conflict drew an equally heated response. Elizabeth's defenders praised her for standing up for her marriage, framing loyalty as non-negotiable. At the same time, Lauren's supporters argued that honesty among friends should never be punished, even when it stings. Every tweet, post, and comment became a mini courtroom, with viewers weighing intent versus impact, loyalty versus ethics, and fear versus ambition. Fans could not stop asking, who crossed the line first, and who paid the higher emotional cost? The episode also sparked broader debates about boundaries in relationships. Could a partner's future plans justify pressuring someone into medical decisions? Could a friend's words unintentionally inflict long-term damage? The discussion went beyond the show, tapping into real-world dilemmas viewers recognized in their own lives. People were polarizing quickly, taking sides but also second-guessing their stance with every new clip shared online. The intensity of the reactions made one thing clear: some fractures go deeper than a single argument. Social validation aside, the characters themselves have to live with the ripple effects. Julia's line has already shifted the family dynamic. Elizabeth's confrontation altered a friendship forever. Brandon and Andre both feel the weight of consequences they may not fully understand yet. One relationship in particular will never return to its old shape, and viewers are debating whether that's tragic or necessary. The fallout is ongoing, and the social conversation shows no sign of slowing. The tension between personal choice, loyalty, and honesty is now a shared experience, extending the drama far beyond the screen. Across all the couples, the same patterns kept emerging, even if the faces changed. With Brandon and Julia, the fight was about control over decisions tied to the body and the future. With Elizabeth and Lauren, it was loyalty, timing, and emotional boundaries. Andre's oversharing mirrored Brandon's need to assert himself. The stakes looked different, but the behaviors were almost identical: pressure, frustration, and misaligned priorities driving conflict. The psychology is striking. Loud arguments often mask quiet fears. Brandon stormed off, but underneath, it was anxiety about a future he could not control. Elizabeth confronted her friend, but beneath the surface, it was fear of betrayal and uncertainty. The episode shows how silence and avoidance create tension that explodes when someone finally speaks. Every outburst, every sharp word, is a response to a fear that has been simmering, not a random act of anger. Viewers are left asking, who will actually learn, and who will repeat the same cycle? Even when conflicts appear resolved, the patterns linger. Past pressures, unmet expectations, and private grievances continue to shape the next conversation. Watching these couples, it becomes clear that relationships are rarely about a single fight. They are about recurring dynamics, how people respond when control is threatened, when loyalty is tested, when boundaries are ignored. Recognizing these patterns is crucial, yet painful, because awareness does not automatically change behavior. The quietest moments often hold the greatest risk. A look, a pause, a refusal to respond, these subtle acts carry more weight than a shouting match. In this episode, the loudest drama highlighted the hidden currents that have been building for months, possibly years. By the end, one decision looms over all of them, a choice that will force permanent clarity. No one can avoid it, and no one can predict how it will reshape these relationships. The stage is set, and the consequences are coming. By the end of the episode, emotions hung in the air like a storm that had passed, but left debris everywhere. Brandon and Julia had drawn lines that were unspoken before, redefining what each would accept and what they would never compromise. Julia's body, her choices, her fear, all had become non-negotiable. And Brandon was forced to confront how his desire for children could not justify pressuring her. The balance of their relationship shifted, fragile but clearer. Elizabeth and Lauren sat on the other side of the spectrum, dealing with cracks that had been forming quietly for months. Trust had been tested, friendship strained, and honesty weaponized inadvertently. Boundaries had been drawn, and while no one stormed out in rage, the quiet acknowledgement of hurt signaled a fracture that might never fully heal. Andre and Alex were left navigating fallout that they could not control, realizing that timing and sensitivity weigh as heavily as intention in any relationship. Viewers are left reflecting. Boundaries reveal love, and pressure reveals fear. Even Ron and Betty, who had previously dominated the stage, now exist in a recalibrated dynamic. Calm authority had shifted the emotional tide, but it did not erase the echoes of past arguments. Every character carries lessons, tensions, and unspoken consequences into the next chapter. Some relationships paused mid-conflict, others fractured under pressure, and a few quietly redefined the lines they will no longer let anyone cross. The episode closes with no full closure, only the awareness that decisions made, words spoken, and boundaries enforced will continue to ripple. The tension is palpable, emotional costs remain unsettled, and one move in the next episode promises to escalate everything further. No one walks away unchanged, and the next confrontation is already on the horizon, waiting to test whether these new boundaries will hold or crumble under pressure.